Hi, welcome to Module 3.2, and we're still talking about estrangement. I decided to add a special segment about boundaries because it's so connected to estrangement. Estrangement happens because there is a lack of boundaries and respect of boundaries for the most part. And so it's also healed, and you can invite somebody back into your community if there is an understanding of boundaries, because boundaries help people feel safe. And boundaries are the referees of relating. So if someone is being invited back into the unit, or if someone leaves a unit, it's because they're stating the lines were so blurred that everyone did whatever they want, how they want it, and it created a lot of pain and a lot of chaos. No one wants to feel unsafe all the time. It heightens your alert system. It's not good for your cortisol levels and your stress and your immune system. It creates turmoil within your body. So boundaries are a healthy format to keep the flooding from happening, because remember, the psychological flooding, the emotional flooding, the relational flooding, that all contributes to estrangement, quitting, and walking away. So if you're going to be someone who teaches boundaries or execute boundaries, you're going to have to begin to establish the route of how will you execute your boundaries? How will you live in boundaries? How will you manage boundaries? The first step is understanding that most people are boundaryless. And so your declaration on obtaining boundaries is going to threaten people. And so it's going to change the natural flow of the relationship. Even though the flow is unhealthy, it's still going to disrupt the flow. And people like flows, even dysfunctional flows. But your decision to create a world that's safe and healthy is going to take you stepping away from your system in love, not creating a gap, but just stepping away mentally after you assess what type of system is this? What's creating the stonewalling? What's creating the estrangement? And then after you become aware, you're going to need support, because you're going to have withdrawals. You're going to feel like a traitor. You're going to feel like, who am I to set new boundaries? Or who am I to come against generational patterns and systems? I am the outsider. I'm creating conflict. I am the problem. I'm the whole problem, because I am going in a different direction from all my family members. So it feels like you're swimming upstream, and you are, because most people in dysfunction and in relationships, they're just going with the flow. But when you decide to set boundaries and create safety, that makes you very intentional, and that makes you very methodical. And so it takes courage and it takes consistency, but it also takes support. If you try to establish boundaries without support, it's going to be very difficult, and you may revert back to the dysfunction. Or you may just say, you know what, I can't go into this family. It's too volatile. I'll just stay out, and I'll just send cards, or I'll just send texts, because there's no safety and there's no trust. So establishing a support system is important. The support system can look like a pastor. It can look like an unbiased therapist. It can look like a trusted, mature friend. You want someone who is mature and who doesn't have the cutoff syndrome or the cancel culture. Ladies, if you've ever been to the hair salon and you've gotten someone who is not skilled, they can look at your hair and they tell you they're going to trim, but you end up with a whole cut, because they were not able to maturely see which part was damaged and what part was good and able to be salvaged. And that's what it is with relationship. There are some things that can be salvaged, but you have to look at what needs to be trimmed. So I like to look at boundaries as trimming, and I like to look at estrangement as cutting, negative estrangement as cutting. So cutting and canceling, you know, those messages we get at the end of the year on Facebook, I'm canceling, I'm going into a new year, new, and everybody who's not with me, they're getting cut off. Well, that's because you're not a professional, or you're not invested in trimming. So you cut good hair, you cut good relationships because of the fragments, or because of the the ends are split and they're less than perfect. Now, don't get me wrong. You do need to trim a hair that where the ends are splitting, because that split will come up and it'll destroy the whole hair shaft. So the objective is to learn how to trim and learn how to recognize unhealthy hair. So the first step, like I said, is trimming and being intentional about getting with people who are able to maturely help you stick to the trimming process, that won't condone, yeah, cut your family off. Oh, I see how they are. They're not right. I wouldn't deal with that. I do not trust people who speak negatively about family members and they don't know both sides. And it shows a lack of character, because if you value family, then you're going to be an opponent. You're going to be a supporter of the family, even if you don't know the issues. You're going to be positive. Negative people talk about cutoff. Negative people talk about everyone's a hater. But you find somebody who can hold you accountable, because there's some things that we do in relationships that we need to check our thoughts, and we need someone to be able to, sit in the middle and mediate our thoughts and the way we're responding in the relationships. So find out who you can get to be unbiased and to help you and to support you as you move towards health and trimming. Boundaries are not weapons. They are not. And that's how I see on the internet, because people are just not mature and they're not savvy in therapy and psychology and therapeutic skills. So they run with one idea and they're like, cut people off, cancel culture. And boundaries are not weapons. The whole intent of boundaries are love lines. Love lines to protect the individuals who are loved and to create an Eden experience, so that people don't have to run away from the relationship, so they can rest in the relationship, so that they can stretch out, take their shoes off, and grow in the relationship. Good boundaries do that. Be aware of environments where there's no boundaries, because anything can happen if there's no boundaries. Boundaries are not weapons. They're not to be weaponized to just keep people out. That would be called a rigid boundary. When you set boundaries because, you call it a boundary, but really it's you not willing to deal with people because you're intolerant and you don't have the energy, or you don't want to have the energy, so you call it protecting yourself. But boundaries are two-way gates or fences with gates that open both ways. But there is a gate. And so when you're safe and when the rules are followed, you get to open the gate. But in a rigid boundary, if you notice with a rigid boundary, there is just an ironclad system that doesn't allow any gates. It's just, those cars you see and they don't have, any doors in the back, the vans you see with no doors. I'm always afraid of that. I'm like, what's going on in there? And the windows are dark. But there should be a gate. Even if there's a lock and there's a code, you should be able to get in. But in a rigid boundary, there's no gates, there's no getting in, and there's no getting out, so there's no true connection. That's more used as protection. And then there are porous boundaries, we know, where it's just a fence, but then the gates open and people can just come in and out as they please with no reference to timing, with no reference to anything. So we want to know that that's not healthy either. You get to have a lock on your door and a front door. It's like having a house without a door. Because society is what it is, we help keep other people safe so they don't go to jail and they don't harm people and they don't, or meet somebody with a gun, because there's stories of 70-year-olds who have guns and you cross into their property and you're going to get shot. So boundaries keep intruders safe and keep the occupants safe until people learn how to follow rules and love people and take care of people. Boundaries keep everyone safe. Boundaries is everyone minded. But if you have porous boundaries, that means that people just come in and out. It's like fluid and there's no direction of the flow of water or the flow of traffic. And that shows you're a people pleaser and you're afraid to say what you need or want, or you have such an insecure attachment that you need to feel connected to people at any cost. And then there's healthy boundaries. I just went over it as well. It's the gates It's the fences with the gates that open both ways. And so we want to strive for that. Healthy boundaries are what we strive for. And it takes for the person that is stating the boundary to first be willing to keep the boundary. Because we like to put boundaries on other people, but we have to become disciplined, and if we're going to maintain discipline and enforce just the discipline of boundaries. So boundaries, again, they're protective lines. I call them love lines, aka love lines, and they protect valuable property. And your family is your most treasured gift that you can take to heaven with you, or they can meet you there, I should say. So you want to respect the gift that God gave you by not letting anyone destroy it, not letting outsiders tell you how to love your family, and not yourself being selfish, but valuing the gift of family and creating the safety. Now, there are defining boundaries, and defining boundaries have to do with your core values. These boundaries are you're expressing to the family and to everyone that this is who I am. This is what is important. This makes us us. You know, we don't hit each other. We don't yell at each other. We don't sexually violate each other. These are the core values that we follow God. We're Christians. We adhere to the Word of God. We're kingdom builders. We lean towards things that the King leans towards, and that becomes our defining boundaries. And your defining boundaries should be non-negotiable. If you're in a relationship with people and then with family members, and they're asking you to abort your defining boundaries, you have permission not to. That costs too much. The only way to define who you are is to set your boundaries that you won't cross, that express your character and your integrity. They ask you to lie. They ask you to do things that are unethical. Even in family, I'm not doing it. I've had people expect that I would, tell a lie about living arrangements so people can go to schools or different things. And I've had to come out and say, I'm not going to be able to do that. And you want to know that your defining boundaries are respected. Because if people don't respect your defining boundaries, they don't respect you. And that's the one you can't negotiate. You might be able to change other boundaries, but your defining boundaries are concrete. Those are the boundaries that you do not change.